Welcome, everybody. This is Music Theory Lesson 3, and today we're going to work on dominant seventh chords. But first, before I start today's lesson, I want to review just a little bit on music notation regarding intervals and chords. I want to make sure you understand how this works. Okay, we talked about two different number systems in music theory. One of them is the counting numbers, which are going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and ongoing. When you see these numbers, the counting numbers, I'm calling them counting numbers so you'll understand what I'm talking about. They refer to intervals. Not chords, intervals. Now, when you see the Roman numerals, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, they refer to chords, just so you understand the difference. The two do not trade places. Now, what you may see 5, 7, you may see 1, 7. So when you see this designation, the 5 refers to the chord, the 7, 9, or whatever other number is up here refers to the interval. Just so you understand, the two can appear together, but they are talking about two completely different things. Okay, we're going to continue with chords, and we're going to be concentrating on the minor seventh chord, or the dominant seventh chord. I hope you've taken time to work on Jesus Loves Me, picking out the melody line and adding chords underneath, using primarily the 1, 4, and 5 chords in the key of C, which we talked about in the previous lesson. So the common addition to the major chords we've covered is a minor seventh. Now, we're talking when we talk about a seventh, and you hear the word seventh. In fact, when you hear TH on the end of a number, such as second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and so on, that's always referring to an interval. It's not the name of a chord, it's referring to an interval. And we discussed the intervals in the first lesson. So, chords are built on thirds, and we've talked about that at length. And you can add as many notes as you want to in the chord, starting with, of course, the basic chord. I'm going to draw it here so I can give you an idea. So here is the root of a chord. This, in case, will be the F chord. Then the third of the chord, which is 3 up, 1, 3. Then the fifth of the chord. And then the seventh of the chord. Now, we could add a ninth, we could add an 11th, and we could just keep going up, adding ledger lines. Just so you know, and if you look at something and it says a Roman numeral 5, say like this, 5 with a 9, okay? Remember that chords are always counted from the root, so the 1 in this case, which is the F. So if we say it's an F9, so it's 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, okay? Now, you may or may not see that depending on the kind of music that you're playing. And we're not going to be working on ninth chords today. We're going to be working on seventh. But we count it the same way. 1, 3, 5, 7. Those are the intervals in the seventh chord. Now, we're going to go back to the key of C. So it's going to be C, E, G, B. Now, there's more than one kind of seventh chord. We're going to be concentrating on the minor seventh. So when you counted and you did your seventh interval, you did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and you did this. Now that is not the chord we're working on today. So the 1, 3, 5, 7, we're not working on that chord because that is a major seventh chord. And you will see that written when they mark it down. So we'll say this is the 1 major 7. Okay, what you're going to see. You're going to see 1 major 7. We're not talking about that chord today. We're talking about the chord when you see the designation 1, 7, 5, 7, 4, 7. Whenever you see that, and you'll see that in music, but you'll see it written this way. E7, A flat 7, C7, B flat 7, and so on. Whenever you see that 7 behind your chord designation, and most of you that are working off of lead sheets, you're not used to 1, 4, and 5. You're used to seeing the actual letter name of the chord, and then you'll see that 7th designation next to it. That simply means a minor 7th added to the base of the chord. Okay, so let's look at what that means for the chord, the C chord. The 1, the 3, the 5, and a minor 7th. Instead of the major 7th. The minor 7th is simply created by lowering the 7th tone of the scale 1/2 step. Now, first of all, you know that in the key of C there is no B flat, okay? So the minute we put in a B flat, which is not in that key, we've added a tone that's not in the key of C. It has now created a tension that tells you it has to go somewhere. It has to be resolved. So in this case, okay, it resolves to the 4 chord. So when you hear a 7th chord or you see the marking of a 7th chord in your music, just be aware that it has to be resolved because it gives tension that has to go somewhere. So you will never end a song on this. It's got to go somewhere. You know, there's a funny story, and I can't remember the name of the composer, but it's told of a composer that went to a concert, and I don't know what the name of the piece was they played or anything else, but they basically ended it on a minor 7th chord, which would have been something like this. Okay, that so unnerved him that he had that tone in his head all the way home. And when he got home, he sat down at the piano and played. He resolved it. He had to get that tension out of his head by resolving the chord. Okay? So it has to be resolved. Now, the minor 7th, because it is an interval, major 7, minor 7, it can be added to any chord. Remember, the chords are counted from the root, so it can be added to a 2, it can be added to a 3, it can be added to a 4, 5. You're just going to count in that scale 7 notes up and then half step down to make it minor. So it can be any chord in it can be built on any note of the scale, okay, as you go up. And it has to be resolved. We're going to concentrate on the dominant 7th today because the dominant 7th is really a power chord, okay? It's a powerful chord, and it's used all the time in music and in theory, and I'm going to explain why in a minute here. But I'm going to also give you right now the shortcut. In other words, if you were counting, I gave you my method of counting all your intervals, which was counting every note, including the note you start on and the note you end on. So if we were counting an interval of a major seventh, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So obviously a minor seventh would be 11 tones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So what we've done is we have the 1 of this chord, we have the third, the 3, we have the 5 with a 5th, and then we have the minor 7th above it. Now, you can sit and you can start with any note and you can count the full 11 to find out what the minor 7th is. But the shortcut is to take the whole chord that you're adding it to, which has a 1, a third, and a 5th. 1, 3, 5. So find the 5 of the chord. In this case, in the C chord, the 5 is a G. And you're going to count up 4 half steps. You're going to count a minor third. 1, 2, 3, 4. And you're there. Okay? Now, if there's 2 numbers you can remember that I use all the time, it's kind of like my cheating system, and that's 4 and 5. And that is major third is 5, minor third is 4. So you're going to count 4 if you know the interval is a major third. You're going to count 5 you're going to count 4 if it's a minor third. You're going to count 5 if it's a major third. Since all of your chords are built in thirds, there's going to be some type of a third you're adding on top of whatever you're doing in the chord. So like we said, the 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, so forth and so on. Okay, so just to show you that this works, a major third and a minor third is what builds the first chord of the scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So a major third is the first part. Then the 5th, 1, 2, 3, 4. So a major chord is composed of 5 half steps, and on top of that, 4 half steps. So you count from 1 to 3 is 5 half steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And from the 3rd to the 5th is 4. So it's major third, and from here, minor third, and then from here, minor third again. 1, 2, 3, 4. So those are my shortcuts in counting. As you build the chords and you keep adding thirds, you know it's a major third or a minor third that you're adding on to the chord that you're using. Okay, now because this chord creates tension, it has to be resolved. It has to go somewhere. And the 5 chord is called the dominant, and the 5/7 is the dominant 7th chord. And it's kind of like a key chord. When you get to C, it's just kind of resting. When you get to a 5/7, in this case, this is a 5/7 in the key of C, which is a G. Okay? Has to go somewhere. Okay, so the 5/7, which is the chord we're talking about, the dominant 7th, always resolves to the 1 of the key. Always. It goes back to the 1. That's where it has to go. So because it has to be resolved to the 1, the 5/7/1, that chord progression establishes the tonality of any key that you're in, because the minute you hear the 5/7, you hear where it has to go. So you realize, oh, wow, yeah, that resolves. Okay, yeah, that's got to go somewhere. And this is what is used primarily all the time in worship when we are modulating between keys. Modulating means we're changing keys. We're going up or down to another key. whatever the song is that we're in. And I'm going to show you how to use this for modulation. One of the things that we do in charismatic worship is we try to create a flow. And to create a flow, we don't stop between every song, play an introduction, and start the next key, because that breaks the flow. Now, if you're at a church that does a lot of hymns, then maybe this doesn't apply to you, because what they're going to want probably is an introduction to every hymn. So you're going to end the hymn however you end it, and then you're going to stop, and then you're going to play the introduction for the next hymn. And so that's a different format. But even if you're not using that format, you may come across times when you want to keep a flow of music going and you don't want to break. You want to move from key to key, and you want to do it smoothly and flow. So I'm going to show you how to do that, and I'm going to give you an example. And what I have done is I have chosen a song that hopefully everybody knows. And that song is "This is the Day." This is the day that the Lord hath made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. We will rejoice, etc. And it repeats. One of the things that our church and other churches have often done with this is start it in one key, and we work our way up the scale, and we keep playing it a key higher, a key higher, a key higher. And there's a lot of songs that we do that with. We play them a key and a key higher. Okay, so in this case, what I've done is I have written down my music list. Now, this is the way you're gonna write your songs in a row. Now, since I'm repeating the same song, I just wrote one song title, but what I wrote to the left is the key that I want to play that song in. I want to play it first in E flat, then I want to play it in F, then I want to play it in G, then I want to play it in A flat, and then we want to go to B flat. I don't think we're going to go to C, because probably you'll have everybody screeching at that point, not being able to reach the notes. But let's just assume we had the title, "This is the Day," down here. Now, this is the way you're going to do your song list. You're going to make up a song list, and you probably have one from Sunday or whenever the last time you had worship or you were part of the team. And on this side, in the middle, you have all the songs, the name of the songs you're going to use. On the left, you will have the key that each song is to be played in. Now, let's assume you're the pianist or you're the guitarist, and if you're the guitarist, you won't like these keys. You won't like E flat, A flat, B flat, but if you're the keyboard player, you won't have any problem with any of them. But they want you to flow from key to key. They don't want an introduction to each song on the list. They just want to go from this song to the next song, just as if it was "This is the Day" and it's moving up the scale. So remember, it takes 2 chords to establish a key. One of them is the 5/7. So we're going to create the song. Now, what you're first going to do, you're going to go to the second song on the list. In this case, it's "This is the Day," and it's in the key of F. Now, to establish the key of F in your head and in the hearing of the people listening, you have to play the 5/7 chord in the key of F. Now, assuming you have made your charts up, the charts that I told you to create for yourself, okay, the first thing you want to say is, okay, what is the 5/7 chord in the key of F? So let's look at F, in case you didn't figure this out, and let's find the 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it happens to be a C. Okay, so the 5/7 chord in the key of F is a C7. Now you're going to take that chord designation and you're going to write it behind the previous song. So we're going to put here C7. Okay. Now, what we're writing, this is our cheat sheet to help us when we get up at the keyboard. Okay. Key you're in, song you're playing or singing, transition chord to the next song, which in this case is going to be the same song. I tried to pick a song I thought everybody would know. Okay, so that's going to get us to the key of F. Now we're in the key of F, and we need to go to the key of G. So now we have to find the 5/7 chord in the key of G. So let's look at that again. Here's G. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that happens to be a D is the 5 chord. We want a D7. So what we want here for our transition chord is the D7. Now remember, this is the 5 chord, 5/7 of this key. This is the 5/7 of this key. That's how we're going to get there. So now we're playing it through the whole time in the key of G. And now we want to go from G to A flat. Okay, so let's look at A flat and say, okay, what is the 5/7 chord in the key of A flat? 1, 3, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 7. Okay, so sorry, wrong chord. Okay, the 5 chord in the key of A flat is an E flat chord. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have to build an E flat 7 chord. 2, 3, 4. Okay, so you have E flat 7, which goes to A flat. So what I need here is my E flat 7 chord. Okay, so now I'm going to be in A flat, and I want to get to B flat. So I need the 5/7 chord in the key of B flat to get there. So let's find it. Okay, so the 5 of the key of B flat is an F, so we're going to build that on the F. It's going to be an F7 chord, and that will take us to B flat. Now, you may have to do this ahead of time if you're not familiar with your transitions because you're not familiar with the 5/7 chords. But let's just look at how this works on This Is the Day. And I'm just going to do the end of each. And I'm going to go to my transition chord into my next key, my transition chord, my next key, my transition chord, my next key, my transition chord, and my next key. Hopefully you can see these. Transition chord, key we're in, and the name of the song. Okay, and you may have different song names in here. I'm just going to show you how it works. So we're going to start on the key of E flat. This is the day that the Lord has made. Now that was a C7. This is the day that the Lord has made. This is the day that the Lord has made. This is the day that the Lord has made. This is the day. Okay, so we just went, this is the day that the Lord has made. This is the day that the Lord has made. This is the day that the Lord has made. This is the day that the Lord has made. This is the day that the Lord has made. Please excuse my poor singing. My voice is not at its best right now. But I'm just giving you an idea how the 5/7 chord works. And it's a very, very powerful chord. And if you don't know right away what that is, then you really, if you haven't already done so, you need to make up your charts with the 1, 4, 5 chords and concentrate then on finding the minor 7th to add to the 5 chord. Remember, this is a power chord. It always has to be resolved, but this is a chord that will enable you to get between keys without any breaks. And that's kind of where it's used. It's called the dominant chord. The dominant seventh means it has a minor seventh added. I challenge you to look at your music for designations of the seventh chord and see where it goes and how it's used in the song that you're doing on, and then put up your list like this, like I just showed you, to show you how to transition between keys. This helps you with flow. And I wanted to add just one more thing about playing by ear that we talked about. I'm showing you how to use the seventh chord in transitioning between keys, but also it can stay in the key that it's in. If you have the 5-7 chord in, say, like you're in the key of C, the 5-7 is a G, it will always resolve to the 1. So if you're in the chord that in the key that you're in, in the key that you're in, if you're in C and you play the 5-7 in C, it's going to resolve back to the 1. Always resolves to the root of the chord. And that's how we establish the sound of a chord or a key in our heads. We hear it, and you'll notice that when that progression is played, the 5-7 to 1, your singers don't have any problem picking out the next song, where it goes and what it does. Okay? So going back to playing by ear, and I gave you an assignment last time, I talked about the way one note can be in a lot of different chords. It can be a 5, it can be a 1, it can be a 3, it can be a 7, it can be a 9, it can be any designation of an interval depending on the chord that it's in. But chords have power to make a song so much more colorful and so much more full. And I wanted to demonstrate that with another song today that most of you, I believe, will know, and that is Surely the Presence of the Lord is in This Place. That was written by Lanny Wolfe sometime way back. But the beginning of this chorus, the interesting thing about it is it uses the same note for literally 10 notes in a row. Okay, now you would think that would really be a boring song. It happens to be a G. So it's surely the presence of the Lord is in this place. Okay, surely the presence of the Lord is in this place. Okay, now if I did it with the standard 1, 4, and 5 designation that we talked about as far as harmonizing which chord to use, in this case, it would be a C chord. Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place. Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place. Okay, that would be extremely monotonous and boring, and it would make the song something you probably wouldn't even want to sing. But that's not the chord progressions that Lanny Wolfe put under this song. And because he progressed through chord progressions, it adds beauty and interest to the song, because this is what he's done. Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place. Can feel his mighty power and his grace. I can feel the brush of angels' wings. I see glory on each face. Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place. And as you saw, he repeated the same thing with the second verse. Can hear the brush of angels' wings. I see glory on each face. Okay? And you can do a similar thing any song that you are harmonizing. If you feel it's monotonous and 1, 4, and 5 don't cut it, look for other chords. Look for another chord, another sound that's there. So when we did this, we did Surely. We were on a C, and it was the 5th. Then we went to an E minor. Now it's the 3rd. Okay, it's the third of the chord. Of the Lord. And now we went 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. Now it's the ninth of an F chord. Okay, and we repeated the same thing later on. Now, the other thing that happens with the use of the seventh chord that I want to make sure to cover, we talked briefly in the previous lesson on chords about various positions of the chords. We talked about the one, the bass, the root, and then we talked about the first inversion. Then we talked about the second inversion. Now, when you add a fourth note to the chord, in this case, now you have 4 possibilities of inversions or of positions of that chord. You need to get used to looking for that chord in its various inversions and not get confused. As I said before, if you're not sure how it works, put the chord back in positions of thirds. So when you're doing this chord, you have, here's your root position, your bass. Here's your first inversion. And as you see, these notes are right next to each other. Okay? Then third inversion. So if that confuses you, my suggestion is take your music paper and let's write it out. Let's start with C, E, G, G, and E flat. Now I'm going to take the bottom note and we're going to move it to the top. Okay. Now we're going to take this bottom note and we're going to move it to the top. Okay, now we're going to take the bottom note again and we're going to move the G to the top. Okay, so as you see, when you start writing inversions of the seventh chord, this was the C7 chord, you're going to have 4 possible positions. You can have the one in the root or showing in the root. You can have the third. You can have the fifth. Or you can even have the seventh, the minor seventh on the bottom. Just so you're aware of that, inversions apply to every various possible chord progression that's out there. So if you have, say, a ninth chord, you're going to have even more inversions because you have more chord, you have more intervals or more notes in the chord that you can put on top of each other and keep moving up, moving up, moving up. Just so you understand that there are inversions and there's now the bass and 3 more inversions instead of the bass and 2 because of the more notes you have in the chord. So anyway, that's today's lesson. It's on 7th chords. Have fun learning your 7th chords, playing your 7th chords, working them into your music lists for transitions between keys. Practice doing that, practice a smooth transition, practice working on transitions. And you can do it even in hymns. I do it a lot in hymns, and I'll give you an example. Jesus Loves Me, it was the one I assigned to you folks, okay? So let's start it out in E flat. And I want to go to the key of C. Okay, let's see if we can put it in F. Okay, so any song, even if you're not transitioning between songs in a list, just for added interest, say you're sitting at the piano and they ask you, oh, can you play for the offering? Okay, So one of the things you can do, if you don't play well by ear at this point in time, but they want you to play an offertory, you can pick any well-known hymn that you know, and you can go on Song Select if your church has a membership. Most churches do. And you can print that song out in several different keys. So you can print it out in C, E flat, F, G, whatever keys you're accustomed playing with. You can lay all the music out in front of you, and all you need to know is the order you're going to move through the keys, lay it out in that order, and now all you have to figure out is the transition chord. And the transition chord is going to be the same thing as you did before. It's going to be the 5/7 of what you're going to. So like I started with Jesus Loves Me, I started in E flat, and I wanted to go to the key of C. So it means I had to go to a G7 chord because that's the 5/7 in the key of C. So I went, okay, I ended on, okay, then I wanted to go to F, which means I had to do a C7. Okay, so you can do it with hymns. For those of you that are in a church maybe where they play hymns, and you just want to add interest to your offertories or to whatever they're doing, or you might even suggest to the song leader if you're doing hymns that, well, can we transition this particular song to another key? One of the choruses that's sung a lot is Alleluia. Okay, I'm in F, G, I'm going to A flat. Okay, so the transitions are all done with 5/7 chords. Use the 5/7 of the key you're going to. So practice this. If you have questions or comments, sorry about all the verbal mistakes on this particular recording. But if you have questions or comments, please leave them on my YouTube channel, and I will try to answer your questions. And I hope that theory is becoming clearer each day and not more confusing. God bless.